We're just saying before the show how it's hard to believe it's already week 11 of the NFL season. Welcome to Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. Jesse Rubinoff alongside Andy McNamara and Donovan Bennett. Guys, this is crazy. The NFL season just flies by, but here we are every Sunday. We hit the ground running. We want your questions, the viewers. We want you to reach out to us so that we can help you with your fantasy starts and sits and the like today, because there's a lot going on. And the number one subject that we were just discussing before we went live on the show is the status of Lamar Jackson. We know that he's basically now 50-50 to start in his game today against the Chicago Bears. So there's lots of moving parts today, but we will try and help you out as much as we possibly can on what is past the halfway point, guys. Pretty hard to believe that we're already past the halfway point of helping out the viewers with the fantasy starts and sits. Andy, already week 11, eh?
Yeah, it's wild. It is. Bye weeks this week. We got Broncos and Rams, so a lot of firepower missing there. And it's really at that point as we're approaching the U.S. Thanksgiving for real life football and fantasy. This is really that push to the playoffs that you're going to be deciding what your fantasy team is. If you're in a dynasty or keeper league, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? This is a key. These next 2 weeks are really going to be setting the tone.
Yeah, so okay, let's begin with the Lamar situation here, because there's a couple of things I want to get across with the Ravens and Bears today. So Hollywood Brown is out. We know that. He is not playing due to a thigh injury. So there's a lot of talk, especially on social media, that Rashad Bateman, the rookie, who I've hyped up from show to show here, he's got this college tape, looks really good, Minnesota product. But the thing is here, are we as confident with Rashad Bateman if it's not Lamar Jackson playing quarterback today for the Baltimore Ravens? So I guess the question is, Donovan, where do we go with this Ravens offense if Lamar Jackson does in fact not play? Because it certainly doesn't sound good. He doesn't sound like he's himself, although he did return to practice on Friday. So Tyler Huntley, the primary backup, has never started a game in the NFL, doesn't have barely any experience in this league. So what are we looking at from the Ravens offense perspective if Lamar doesn't play?
I mean, you got to stay away. If you are desperate because of your injury and bye situation, maybe you play Bateman. Brown is out, so those targets have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
The Bears defense certainly is nothing that I'm impressed with, especially now that they are without Khalil Mack. But this game in general, when it comes to offensive playmakers, I think you're staying away. Take the under as soon as you can.
So Justin Fields, a little bit of a turnaround here. Started off the year pretty slow, but the last couple games starting to gain some fantasy relevance with the Bears. And a lot of that, Andy, is due to the rushing ability that we've been calling for weeks and weeks and weeks. Do play action, get him outside the lines, and let him run a little bit. And that's been what's happening with the Chicago Bears. So are we finally seeing now an offense where Justin Fields, number one, can be playable from a fantasy perspective? And what does that do for maybe the Mooneys and the Cole Kmets of that Chicago Bears offense? We do know that Allen Robinson is doubtful today. He doesn't look like he's going to play. But how is that Bears offense? Is it trending in the right direction finally?
It is trending in the right direction, Jesse. I'm not ready to put Justin Fields in as a QB1, even a back-end one yet for fantasy. 2 quarterback leagues, I think you can do it with the like factor. And he is trending in the right direction. Darnell Mooney, certainly the play. Even if Allen Robinson is healthy, Mooney's the guy. You get that. It's what we talked about earlier in the year. When new quarterbacks come in part way, they practice with the guys who typically aren't the starters because those are the reps they're getting. And Mooney and Fields definitely have that chemistry. Cole Kmet, I'm in a situation myself where I have to play Cole Kmet because I'm not comfortable playing TJ Hawkinson for the Lions. So I picked up Cole Kmet. I think it's a case where he's also trending in the right direction. And then you got David Montgomery back there as well. So quietly, the Chicago Bears have a few nice fantasy pieces that you can put into those sort of secondary options.
So you brought up the Detroit Lions and finally able to get a tie and not suffer yet another loss, a tie with the Steelers, and Jared Goff not going to play, doesn't look like. So we're looking at Donovan, 4th year undrafted free agent, Timmy Boyle in college. This was his touchdown to interception ratio was 12 touchdowns to 26 interceptions, yet somehow the undrafted free agent finds himself in the National Football League starting against Andy's Cleveland Brown defense. So, first of all, where are we slating the Browns defense today? And second of all, is there anyone that you would touch in the Lions offense other than probably, I guess, DeAndre Swift, because he's basically matchup proof at this point?
DeAndre Swift is an automatic start, no matter who is standing in front of him as a quarterback. First of all, I hate ties. Can I just say that?
Yeah.
Like, I know we can't have NFL players playing in extra time for another hour like it's soccer, but Dan Campbell's talking about we're going to bite their kneecaps. What do you say to your locker room after a tie? Do you hand out a game ball? Do you say see you on Tuesday? Are you happy or are you sad, upset? I hate ties.
Oh, the Lions were happy. Deech, the Lions were happy.
We didn't
They were happy to
lose.
do anything but anything but a
suppose.
loss. Like that was a Super Bowl type victory for the Lions, and it wasn't even a win.
But remember the Saints a couple years ago had Club W, where after wins they had a DJ and they had strobe lights and they blacked out the locker room and they're all dancing and partying. Sean Payton would have the broom. Are the Lions partying after a tie? Like, these are the questions that keep me up at night. And so much so that I even forget the original question that you asked me. But DeAndre Swift, yes, you're playing him.
Just Lions, just basically Lions offense.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, no matter the quarterback, Swift, Hawkinson, those are the Lions you want. You don't want their defense, certainly. You don't want any other skill position player until proven otherwise.
Yeah, okay, let's get to a couple questions here. Mike O says, good morning, gents. Good morning, Mike. Half PPR flex. We got Manny Sanders. I love how all of a sudden we've just all started referring to him as Manny. Manny Sanders, Dante Foreman, or Jeff Wilson Jr. now that it looks like Elijah Mitchell is out. Elijah Mitchell dealing with a finger issue. So it's Manny Sanders, Dante Foreman, or Jeff Wilson Jr., who could be a sneaky bell cow in the 49ers offense there. Andy, which one are you going with there?
Let me add one quick point to the Lions offense, guys.
Yeah.
Back to that for a second. Dan Campbell took over play calling from Anthony Lynn last week, and he's playing 1950 football, not even like mid-50s, where like the forward pass was a rumor. It was like, I don't know, it's a little risky. And he ran the ball nonstop, 200 plus yards. Like, he just unapologetically was like, we're going to keep running. We have nothing to lose and keep doing it. So I think, DeAndre Swift is beyond a great start. Like, just like, so, and probably Jamal Williams coming back as well, because they will just run the football. So I just wanted to get that out there. He will not be throwing today. Out of those options there, I think Jeff Wilson, as long as Eli Mitchell does not play, guys pop before, and he's going to have the backfield to himself.
Yeah, Donovan, same question. Manny Sanders, Dante Foreman, or Jeff Wilson Jr. Kind of a surprise that Dante Foreman, I think, has sort of separated himself a little bit in the Titans backfield, but does that matter to you, or are you going with what Andy said, Jeff Wilson?
No, listen, is Jeff Wilson going to have the backfield to himself? Is Kyle Shanahan going to keep us on our toes once again? I am so afraid of Shanahan when everything seems obvious. He decides to throw a wrinkle in there. I actually like Dante Foreman in this spot. He led all Titans rushers in terms of snaps last week. He had clearly the most pop, and so yes, AP all day is a bit of a veteran, but I think as the season continues, Foreman will get the bulk of the load of the carries in Tennessee. So I like him a lot.
It's hard to believe how good the Titans have looked despite the loss of Derrick Henry, because I remember a couple weeks ago we came on here, Andy, I believe it was me and you, and we just said like, there might not be a more valuable player to their team than Derrick Henry in the entire league. And I think it just underscores how good of a job Mike Vrabel has done, how underrated Ryan Tannehill is. A.J. Brown certainly doing some amazing things in that receiving core. So obviously a long way to go here, a lot of runway left in the NFL season, but very impressive what the Tennessee Titans have been able to do without Derrick Henry. Okay, youngest, half PPR. Saquon Barkley or Darnell Mooney says they're the heavy favorite and leaning towards a safe bet of Mooney because Saquon Barkley's status with that ankle injury still a little bit up in the air. Deej, what say you?
He said it himself. He's the heavy favorite. he's looking for some security, and I think the more secure play is Mooney, especially given the fact that it's not standard scoring and it's a half PPR league.
Andy, Barkley or Mooney?
Yeah, got to go with Mooney. Barkley's in a case again, guys, where we have to see it, right? And Booker's also banged up, and it's Monday night. So if you're wrong, that's the tricky part. If you're wrong and you gamble, you're out of luck, right? You're stuck. So I would go with the safer play here because Barkley, again, can he go off? He's had a couple 20-plus fantasy point games this year, but that's it. So he has to. I will err on the side of watching Saquon Barkley have a 20-plus fantasy point game rather than play him. I need to see it again that he's actually healthy and can go.
Yeah, it's a great point because if it was under some circumstances, the running back or backup running back would be available, but Devontae Booker is not going to be available anywhere, so you're going to be out of luck if you're just waiting on Saquon Barkley. Okay, let's continue on with a couple questions here. El Duque 2K says, with Kyler Murray likely out, my alternatives are Big Ben, Tyrod Taylor, or Colt McCoy. I got to be honest. Okay, so Kyler Murray, I have Colt McCoy in one of the leagues. Not even a single point. Didn't get me a single point. Okay, so I'm looking at it this week. Kyler Murray looks like he's probably on the wrong side of questionable here. It doesn't look like he's going to play. And I am seriously thinking about throwing a receiver or a running back into the flex position instead of Colt McCoy just because I can't go through what happened last week again. So, Andy, let's help El Duque out. Big Ben, Tyrod Taylor, or Colt McCoy. I'm going to automatically disqualify Colt McCoy if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, for your case, absolutely put a receiver or somebody in there for sure. Put Marcus Johnson in. We can talk about him later. That's my sort of hot pick of the week type. Marcus Johnson of the Titans.
Titans, yeah.
Wait to see that today. Colt McCoy also, guys, never mind that even if he's healthy, as a real-life efficient backup, does the job. What you want in a backup. He's got a pectoral injury, too. We could be looking at Stone Cold Chris Streveler, CFL's own, CFL Grey Cup champion Chris Streveler.
Legend. Yeah.
Strolling in, right? Streveler could do it. So we don't want any part of Colt McCoy. I would honestly look, and he's still widely available. See if Cam Newton's on your waiver wire over any of those guys. I will take the risk and take the ceiling possibility of Cam rushing in 2 touchdowns, throwing 1, and passing for like 140 yards over any of those guys. But if I have to pick, I'll go with Tyrod Taylor, and simply because his floor is like 0, but if he can run a little bit, he can maybe get you into the high teens.
Yeah, nicknamed T-Mobile for a reason. DJ, Big Ben, Tyrod Taylor, or Colt McCoy.
Andy's correct. Tyrod Taylor has the highest floor. And now I'm going to argue that Tyrod Taylor has the highest ceiling because he's playing the New York Jets. And the Cincinnati Bengals defense, although that team has been up and down, their defense has been relatively solid. We saw what the Bills did to that, Jets defense this year in terms of offensively. The schemes and systems are pretty similar in Houston. And so I think Tyrod could have a big day against New York.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at Tyrod Taylor because he threw 3 picks last week, took 5 sacks, but you look at his performances early in the season, and there was some substance there, especially from a fantasy perspective, so you know what he's capable of. You just hope that he doesn't turn in a performance like he did last week. I want to get back to Cam Newton. Andy, you talked about it. This game is just ripe with storylines against the Washington football team this week. Cam Newton coming back finally. And what do we think about, first of all, he's a goal line cheat code. Like, let's get that across first. Like, we saw his ability to just bootleg it out there. He's a big boy, very difficult to take him down. So what do we like from a fantasy perspective? What does he do for the rest of that team? Because CMC finally looks like he's starting to get a normal workload. DJ Moore has been sort of trending downwards a little bit, but does he revive this offense a little bit in your mind?
So here's my strategy, because I have Matt Stafford in one of my leagues, so I needed a replacement for bye-week coverage. So my choices was Matt Ryan and Cam Newton. Now, I don't care what Cam Newton, unless his leg falls off, he's going to have a better fantasy week than Matt Ryan did. My goodness. Disgusting.
Yeah, that was gross, yeah.
So I was thinking this. Cam Newton for the rest of the year, can we count that he's going to stay healthy? We cannot. However, this week, can we see a clear path to him having a nice fill-in streaming fantasy week. He's only $5,100 on DraftKings as well. A nice, cheaper play there. I think we absolutely can. The fact is, guys, Cam Newton's arm, it's gone. And back in his prime, I felt he was an underrated passer. I thought his arm was better. He was more accurate than people gave him credit for. But right now, he's shot putting the ball. He can't do it. Like the shoulder's broken. So that takes away from me DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson outside of anything that's not a slant. That's real close. So he takes away some touchdowns possibilities for Christian McCaffrey. I feel the only two safe bets are Christian McCaffrey and Cam Newton himself. Everybody else on that offense is going to be at the whim of Cam Newton's arm, and I think that's a bit of a dicey play when you're looking at it from him having to make the receivers around him better.
TJ, I want to get your opinion on this too, because he's going against a Washington football team. First of all, his former head coach is on the other sideline, and Ron Rivera. But the Washington football team defense, missing Chase Young, tore his ACL last week, which is just brutal. Montez Sweat still out. And this football team defense has been one of the most disappointing defensive units in the entire NFL this year. So what are you expecting from Cam Newton today and then moving forward with the rest of the season outlook?
Yeah, the Washington football team defense was a bit better and closer to what we remember from them last week. But this year, they have been terrible. I think a big part of it is, the defense is tied to the offense. They've been on the field too much. They've played too many snaps. And I don't think that's necessarily going to change against Carolina this week. I would say, though, for the only other person on that Carolina offense that maybe I might see a glimmer of hope in the future would be Robbie Anderson. Got into the end zone last week. He's been in a witness protection program all year. So if you have held on to him this long, expecting the production we saw last year, the player that he was at the end of his time with the New York Jets, where he was flirting around 1,000 yards receiving, he's not been that player at all. But if you've held on this long, maybe you're hoping that the fact he was able to celebrate a touchdown last week will breathe some life into him. But yeah, if you're Carolina, all of their offense is on the ground, and that's now two players, McCaffrey and Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm. It just feels like they're riding a wave of emotion that they haven't had in a long time in Carolina. So it's going to be fun to watch regardless of what happens. Let's see if they can sustain that momentum. Okay, some news trickling out now. It appears Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be back in the lineup for the Kansas City Chiefs today. So Jorge is asking, and this is where it sort of looms large, Mark Ingram or Darrell Williams in a standard league. So what are we doing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire being reintegrated into this offense? What does that do to Darrell Williams? And we know that Alvin Kamara is not going to play today, still dealing with a knee issue. So for me, Mark Ingram is definitely a safer play because we saw what he did last week. He was in a workhorse role. Am I correct in that thinking, Andy, that Mark Ingram is probably going to have a better day than Darrell Williams today?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt in my mind that Mark Ingram is the smart play. I would argue, even if Clyde Edwards-Helaire was not coming back, I would take him over Darrell Williams this week. Mark Ingram for sure. You sprinkle in CEH. So what does that mean? It means we don't know what the work share is going to be. We don't know. And I hate not knowing. And that leaves questions, and that leaves committees, and that leaves situations where you could have a dud. I think Mark Ingram is set up, especially where really the only other option on that Saints offense, Deontay Harris has quietly gotten you some nice, in PPR, nice mid-teens, 13 to 15 fantasy points, which I like. And even the rookie Troutman at tight end, lower end tight end one, but not a bad target share either. So I think Mark Ingram, and especially that Trevor Siemian throws the ball so short of a distance, that's your guy.
Yeah, hold on to that Saints quarterback discussion for 1 second. We'll go back there in 1 sec. But DJ, I want to get your opinion on Mark Ingram or Darrell Williams.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and CH has been practicing for a while. And there's some thought that he was going to come off the IR a little bit earlier, and they've held him. There was also some thought on the flip side that with the Chiefs having a bye coming up next week, that they'd hold him out a little bit longer, get him to full health. The fact that he's back now, to me, means they really feel comfortable and confident with him that he's going to be able to not be on a pitch count and play quite a bit. The other thing is Andy Reid is enamored with him. And, Darrell Williams should have been the lead back in that offense for a while when you look at
Yeah.
productivity, but you look at the fact that he's a first round draft pick and he's got all the ability in the world. It's just never really, for whatever reason, come off. For all those reasons, I think Williams should get more snaps than CEH, but I don't know if he will, and thus I like Ingram. I'm afraid that Bills game might get out of hand, and the Saints might throw quite a bit in the second half. The difficulty there, though, is the Bills haven't really beaten anybody good. Sorry, Bills fans. And so, given the Saints' defense, I think that game might stay closer than people like me expect, and thus Ingram will have a game script that will give him success.
Andy, I wanted to get your opinion on just the quarterback situation for the Saints. And Trevor Siemian has done an adequate job, but do you foresee the Saints turning it over to Taysom Hill anytime soon? Because right now he's just been basically a package player. He's not doing much, but I think there are a lot of fantasy managers out there who would love to have Taysom Hill, someone who runs all of the time from the quarterback position. It would do wonders from a fantasy perspective. Like, is there a pathway here where the Saints finally turn to Taysom Hill?
With Sean Payton at coach, yes. There's always a path for Taysom Hill. And folks, remember, Sean Payton hates your fantasy football team. He hates your team. He hates my team. He hates all of our teams, with Taysom Hill still floating around, always present, always waiting to vault or something.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. So yes, there is absolutely a way. I think with Trevor Siemian, it is a safer, he's kind of like a Colt McCoy type, right? He is a safe, efficient quarterback. He's not going to necessarily lose you a game, but if you're down by a lot, he's not going to win you a game. He's a nice, simple, safe play. So I think it really depends on game script. If they're down and they need what they feel is a spark or something, then yeah, Taysom Hill's going to get some more time potentially, and he could always do it. I think that's just something we're going to have to track. Right now, Trevor Siemian is good news for the running backs and players that can catch those less than 6 yards average completions that he's putting out there. Less than 6 yards.
Okay, back to how we started this conversation. Jacina Anderson is reporting that Lamar Jackson is, quote, not doing well enough to play, according to a league source. So it doesn't look like Lamar Jackson is going to be suiting up today. And that has ripple effects everywhere across the board with that Ravens offense going up against the Chicago Bears, who they're not exactly a revelation defensively, but still, you're now looking at Tyler Huntley, the primary backup, making his first career NFL start. And what does that do to the Ravens offense? How does that affect Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray and Rashad Bateman, who many people were banking on to have a pretty good day? So, Andy, I just want to get your initial thoughts now that it's looking like Lamar Jackson is, in fact, not going to play today.
If he does not play officially, Devontae Freeman is a must play. I know Latavius Murray's coming back. I just feel this is a hand off the football type of day. What do we always see when you have these young quarterbacks? It's not like Huntley was planning. Maybe he had an idea, but it wasn't like a sure thing that he was going to be starting. You want to keep this as simple as possible. So that means you're handing it off to your running backs and you're throwing short passes. I think this neuters any wide receiver from the Ravens. Bateman, anybody else, I'm taking him right off the board. Now, could Huntley air it out? I'll go back to this example. If Mike White can throw for 400 yards, then yes, he could. Anything's possible. I don't think it will. Mark Andrews is probably, you're not going to have a better option. You're probably playing him still because you don't have a better choice. But otherwise, I think it's Freeman is really the must play in this matchup. And you're just going to want to kind of shy away just because we don't know anything about Tyler Snoop Huntley.
You're right, but I'm making faces over here because I have Rashad Bateman in every league.
I know.
I felt like a genius. I was that guy who just snooping around the IRs, waiting for a first round pick and waiting for him to pop off. And here we are, just when it looks like he has the opportunity with Hollywood Brown out of the lineup, we get thrown this into the equation. So that's definitely difficult for everyone that's been stashing Rashad Bateman.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on here. It's enough with the Ravens conversation. Albert says Michael Gallup or Laviska Shenault for my flex, which isn't much of a conversation to me because Amari Cooper is sidelined with COVID issues, and Gallup is someone who should go nuts today, right, DJ?
Yeah, I think it's Gallup regardless. And now that Cooper is out of the lineup, it's certainly Gallup. If you've got a need at wide receiver, need to make a pickup for what looks like now, because the Cowboys play on Thursday, the next 2 weeks of no Amari Cooper out with COVID. Albert Wilson is certainly an option for a receiver who gave some good fantasy moments when Gallup was on the IR earlier. Do not trust a Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver because they're liable to have as many drops as they have receptions. The target stats don't mean anything in Jacksonville. So I know, Laviska Shenault Jr. is a fantasy name that people love to say that they picked him up late and it's great value, but
always.
Shenault Jr., Jones Jr., Donovan Jr. is saying no. Stay away.
Yeah, but they don't use Shenault, Andy. They don't use him properly. He's running on the outside. That's not what he is. He's more of like a slot. I don't know. I'm talking like I'm a 5-time coach, NFL Coach of the Year, but I just think that they don't use his talents appropriately, and that hurts his fantasy value.
Well, Jesse, the guy who's coaching the team, who's not going to win Coach of the Year for the first time this year, he's already talking about college receivers that he recruited that they might be able to pick in the draft. That's how he feels about his wide receiver room. So if that's how Urban Meyer feels, you shouldn't feel more confident as a fantasy owner.
That's right.
Stay away from Jags receivers.
That's right. I should say it does appear that James Robinson, who is dealing with knee and heel and all sorts of issues, does appear like he is going to play. And boys, Lamar Jackson officially inactive today against the Chicago Bears. So that is a big one to drop while we're live on the air here. Okay, moving on. That obviously has massive implications, but we've discussed it at length here. I don't think we need to go back to it unless anyone has any parting thoughts about the Ravens.
I do like Jamal Agnew on the Jacksonville Jaguars as a play today for a flex. But to get to the Shenault question real quick, he's still stuck in gimmick mode, where it's sort of what Cordarrelle Patterson was for all of his career until this year, where he was kind of a running back, he was kind of a receiver, he was kind of a returner, but then he was ultimately nothing. That's what Shenault Jr. is right now. He's not being used at all. So I think the only options really, you know what? I think there's three. Robinson because he's in, Agnew as a flex, and Dan Arnold. Arnold as a tight end, guys. It doesn't take much to be a tight end one in fantasy football. Let's be honest. You can get 8 points and be a number 10 guy. I think Dan Arnold is a nice play today too.
Dan Arnold is quietly putting together a pretty good year here. I think he has over 60 yards in 4 of his last 5 games or something like that. So definitely someone who's trending towards an every week tight end in what is a barren position in fantasy. Okay, it looks like Miles Sanders is officially active for Sunday's game today against the Saints, activated from the IR on Saturday. So Sam is asking, is Boston Scott toast now that Miles Sanders is back? Tony Pollard the only other running back option? So Donovan, I'll begin with you. Is Boston Scott toast with Miles Sanders back in the lineup?
I think so. Miles Sanders, we were struggling to justify to play. So now that he's back, you're talking yourself into another Eagles running back. There is a timeshare in the Eagles backfield in terms of running the ball. It is Miles Sanders and it is Jalen Hurts. And so you're essentially asking yourself, do you want to start a third running back on a team that is not appreciably good on offense? The answer for me is no. So, I would take Tony Pollard over Boston Scott. I would take any back in a committee over Boston Scott, quite frankly.
Yeah, it just seems like even with Miles Sanders coming back in the lineup, like there is a scenario here where the Eagles use Jordan Howard or even continue to use Boston Scott, but it could nullify sort of all of their productivity in a committee, which I know if you took Miles Sanders in your drafts, that's uncomfortable because of probably where you selected him. You selected him as an RB2, and there is still a pathway for him to get that value, but it seems like Jordan Howard is still going to be someone who's involved in this offense because of how effective he was while Sanders was out. So, Andy, Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, like, is it just more of a wait and see approach in this Eagles backfield?
Yeah, until someone separates, and I don't think anybody's going to.
Yeah.
Kenneth Gainwell's in the doghouse for some reason, too. The coaching staff has said Jordan Howard will have a large role, an important continued role when Miles Sanders came back. That came out of the head coach's mouth.
Yeah.
And your quarterback runs, by the way. So do I want any part of that backfield right now? I don't. I don't want any part of it until we see any sort of even like 2 games in a row separation from somebody. Like even to give me something that I can say, okay, there's a bit of a pattern forming. Right now, I think it's a guessing game, and I hate guessing when it comes to fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point you've made a couple times already today, that you want certainty when it comes to, or as much as you can possibly get. And you want guys with higher floors in most scenarios, not all the time, because Deej, I know you've talked about strategy before where you can go boom or bust if you think that it's going to help put your team over the top. But the majority of the time, I say we could probably agree that you're looking for certainty, and the Eagles' backfield is not somewhere where you're going to find certainty. At least it doesn't appear so this week. Okay, Flair Blitz is asking, without Kyler Murray, go Ryan Tannehill or the spicy pick, Cam Newton. We've already talked about Cam Newton, but let's help Flair Blitz out. Tannehill or Cam Newton, DJ?
I think it's still Tannehill. Tannehill is still been productive without his MVP in the backfield. So Cam Newton, he looked great in limited snaps on the goal line. He's still coming off the couch and playing an entire season with. To be honest, since he was last Carolina Panther, a lot of new teammates in that receiving core. So I think Tannehill's still the guy.
Andy, are you rolling with Tannehill or Cam Newton? You were talking up the spicy pick, Cam Newton, earlier. Is that who you're going to roll with in this spot?
Boy, it depends on your risk tolerance, okay? Tannehill is the safer pick, absolutely. He's not nearly the guy. He's not the Tana Thrill anymore. He's Tana, I don't know, plain toast or something. Like it's just, he's giving you mid to high teens, right? That's about it. Now, he's flashed a little bit, but for the most part, you're getting that. So if you're comfortable with that, if your team is built around, you think you can win with getting 17 to 18, maybe 19 fantasy points, I say you go with Tannehill. If you might need a little bit of a boost, if you might need to be that little bit of a risk with certainly a much lower floor, that basement is deep, I'm going to say Cam Newton. I don't know. I think for one game, I think for a one-off, I'm just feeling the Cam Newton vibe today. I think he does. I think it's going to be a weird-looking stat line. I think Cam is going to give you the better outcome after today.
Andy, while we're on the topic of the Titans, I know you wanted to talk about Marcus Johnson, and you think he's a deep league sort of sleeper, or maybe not even that deep of a league. 5 catches, 100 yards receiving last week as the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver to A.J. Brown now with Julio Jones out of the lineup. So what do you like about Marcus Johnson?
In 3 games without Julio Jones this year, he's gotten 5 catches. He's a consistent go-to when Julio is not on the field, which is, again, what I want to see. You can have these one-off performances all the time. But the fact that when Julio's been out, he has definitely leaped up to be the number 2, and he has gotten a consistent workload. Also, we know A.J. Brown is going to get double-teamed. We know that. He's the only other real the tight end's doing nothing. The backfield is a committee right now. Now, McNichols is out, but you still have Foreman and AP. Marcus Johnson, I wrote about this in my Tuesday Sportsnet waiver wire article, guys. On Tuesday, he was owned in 1% of Yahoo
That's
leagues.
crazy.
Now he's up to 18. I think for PPR as well. You know what? I'll say half PPR. Standard, maybe not as much, but I think there's a play in any type of format where Marcus Johnson could be a great bye-week fill-in, either as a flex or WR2 on bye week, and maybe somebody, if it continues, that can help you out down the stretch as well. I love Marcus Johnson today.
It's a really interesting point because you look at some of the other offenses around the league where the number 2 receiver doesn't really do that much, just based on the tight end looming large in the offense or the number 1 receiver really dominating the targets. But I think this is a situation here where the number 2 receiver can actually thrive because it's not like the Titans have a dominant tight end or anything like that. So I agree. I think Marcus Johnson could actually do some damage here in this Titans offense. Dave O is asking full PPR. Deej, I'll start with you, even though this is more in Andy's wheelhouse because it's a Cleveland Brown. Jarvis Landry or Tyler Boyd at the wide receiver 3 position. Jarvis Landry or Tyler Boyd. It's a full PPR league.
I'm sorry, Andy. I'll go Tyler Boyd.
I'm with you.
I've been waiting for the Jarvis Landry breakout. He's hurt, comes back. OBJ is removed from the scenario, and it just, for whatever reason, hasn't happened yet. So I think, if we're talking about ceilings, Boyd has the higher ceiling in an offense that has been passing more and has had much more success passing.
Andy, it's just crazy because you look at the depth charts and you would think that Jarvis Landry should command most of the targets for that Browns receiving core. And then you look at Tyler Boyd and he's so obviously third behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But in this case, it almost doesn't matter because the Bengals throw more than the Browns do. And Joe Burrow has been more efficient, more effective than Baker Mayfield. So you said you're in agreement with Donovan. You would go Tyler Boyd over Jarvis Landry here?
Yeah, you just have to. For Landry, he's still not right. He has injuries to both knees. He's had rib issues. He's just not right. He's tough as nails, like Baker, but he's not right. And when this offense is clicking, it is run first to set up play action and throw it out. Now, Donovan Peoples-Jones is out for the Browns, so that opens up maybe more possibilities for Jarvis, but it's not a case where Baker Mayfield doesn't want to get Jarvis Landry the ball. He does. He's his favorite target when he's healthy. It's just that Jarvis Landry either can't get open or isn't 100%. So I think you look to Nick Chubb as the RB1. You go to Dearness Johnson as that flex possibility. And really on the outside after that, I would try to stay away from receivers. Maybe Austin Hooper at tight end. Njoku could always pop in, but really it's only the running backs for me today.
Oh, Dearness Johnson. I mean, if the trade deadline hadn't already passed, you just think that the numbers that this guy's putting up, or even if he was just on a team where he could be the RB1, like this would be a fantasy league winner, as they say. Yeah. But here he is stuck behind Nick Chubb, who's pretty dominant in his own right. Okay, T-Dubs is asking, hey guys, standard flex position, D'Onta Foreman or Chase Claypool, who looks like he's going to be back in the lineup today for the Pittsburgh Steelers. D'Onta Foreman or Chase Claypool. DJ, let's begin with you.
I don't think I would say this coming into the season, and apologies to my fellow Canadians, but D'Onta Foreman, Chase Claypool has been up and down this year, and mainly down. It's been really disappointing, especially once Juju Schuster was removed, and you think, okay, you're no longer going to have to spread the ball around to as many mouths on that offense. But the number one target in that offense has been at times Washington. At times it's been Najee Harris, and so I think the safer play is Foreman.
Yeah, Andy, I'm with DJ here. Like, it just doesn't seem like Chase Claypool has been able to carve out any sort of consistency when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It does appear like Big Ben is going to be back in the lineup for the Steelers today, which is good, but they certainly focus around Najee Harris here. That's the straw that stirs the drink in that offense. So are you going with D'Onta Foreman or Chase Claypool today?
Yeah, you got to go with Foreman. Based really, with Big Ben. Now, better than Mason Rudolph? Yes. Absolutely. It's Deontay Johnson in that offense if someone's catching the ball. Why?
Yeah.
Because he's inside. I don't blame Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool didn't get less talented. It's that his quarterback's ready for the glue factory. It's done for Big Ben. He can't force the ball. So we're going. The beneficiary is Deontay Johnson and the tight end Pat Freermuth. Watch for another big game for Freermuth because before he was missed, he had 2 straight weeks and 2.5 even going back to the week before of really nice fantasy production. It's Deontay Johnson, it's Freermuth, and it is Najee Harris, and I would stay away from anybody else.
Muth. Okay, moving on. Spencer Sasso wants to know, Jalen Waddle, Andy's boy Hunter Renfro, or Christian Kirk? I mean, this is a fantastic question in my opinion here because you have 3 guys here that have really performed in all different situations. Jalen Waddle with the Dolphins has just soaked up all of the targets in the Dolphins offense. Hunter Renfro is firmly entrenched as Andy's boy. You start him no matter what. This is what Andy said 2 weeks ago. Or Christian Kirk, who has been a beneficiary of DeAndre Hopkins being injured the last couple weeks. So, Andy, why don't we begin with you? Jalen Waddle, Hunter Renfro, or Christian Kirk, all very fine options today on this Sunday.
Yep, all great options. Actually, on one of my fantasy teams, because of bye week, I'm starting Kirk and Renfro. And if I had Waddle, I'd probably start him too. So you have the connection with Waddle and Tua being back, and it's a great matchup, absolutely. Hunter Renfro, though, guys, like the guy, whether he scores a touchdown or not, and he has touchdowns in consecutive games, but even when he doesn't score, he's still getting you in those mid-teen fantasy points. Like PPR specifically, I don't love him nearly as much in standard, but PPR, Hunter Renfro has been absolutely incredible, and you can't deny it. So I think out of those three, I would lean towards Renfro. Nice matchup in what should be a forced shootout with Cincinnati.
Yeah, Hunter Renfro is just a route running specialist. I mean, the guy's breaking ankles out there. He's so crisp. Again, three really solid options. DJ, is there a direction where you're leaning here between these three gentlemen?
Yeah, well, process of elimination. I'm taking Kirk out of the conversation because of the quarterback situation. And so that leaves me Renfro and Waddle. I feel great about both. I am starting Renfro this week. So that lets you know that I really feel confident in him. However, I actually like Waddle a little bit more, especially if you're in a situation where you need the high upside. I think it's going to be a forced shootout because they're playing the Jets. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities for big plays down the field. That's Waddle's specialty. And so I think he could go off today.
Oh, it just feels like Jalen Waddle is one of those guys that is just going to take a massive leap either late in the season here or into his sophomore year. Just uber talented receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Okay, Jamie is asking Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr at quarterback. Cousins going up against the Packers today. Game is in Mini, which is important to point out because the conditions are often a factor when it comes to Kirk Cousins, but it is in a dome. Or Derek Carr going up against the Bengals in what profiles sort of as a shootout game. So, Andy, where are you going here, Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr?
I think Derek Carr, because what we spoke about, the Renfro example of that Cincinnati keeps throwing the football. They can. Now, they've been, like so many teams this year, they've put up huge points. They've had a dud, right? Raiders have been good for the majority of the year. They got decimated by Kansas City last week. Well, they're not nearly as bad as what the Chiefs made them look like a week ago. So I'm going to go with Derek Carr because of the fact that it looks like you should be forced to throw the football. And if you have to do that, I would take that over Derek Carr, where for Kirk Cousins, while again, more that safer, sort of in that Tannehill vein, he could always hand it off 30 times to Dalvin Cook and have himself like a 14-point day.
Yeah, DJ, Andy, a lot of good points there. Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, who just came off just a brutal performance last week. The Raiders just looked horrendous, so much so to the point where one of my picks on Tim and Friends this week is the Bengals over the Raiders, which hopefully it's not a bounce back day for the Raiders. But in this case, are you going Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr?
Derek Carr. I think all of the non-football happenings with the Raiders, Henry Ruggs, obviously most recently, that's coming off the heels of the John Gruden scenario. Maybe he's caught up with them, but that was a terrible performance by Carr and the entire Raiders offense. But Carr has been really, really good for stretches this week. Cousins has been meh, and so I would take Derek Carr.
I mean that's another question where the options I think are very close, but that's why we're here to help out and sort of separate when the options are pretty close together. Jerry is asking, with Kyler out, should he start Carson Wentz or Jimmy Garappolo, who's coming off just a ridiculous performance by the 49ers against the Rams, just eviscerating the Rams, who are everybody's Super Bowl favorites or darlings, and Jimmy G putting through quite a performance. So, Andy, you going Carson Wentz or Jimmy Garappolo today?
I've loved Carson Wentz this season, his bounce back since the ankles got better. But, guys, the Buffalo Bills defense legitimately has given up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, to running backs, and to wide receivers. Like, it just seems, I think he can have an okay real-life day. Fantasy-wise, I want no part of it. The trouble, of course, with Jimmy G is that with Kyle Shanahan, like we talked about, that unpredictability with running backs, well, Jimmy G could throw it 10 times. Or, like the 2 weeks prior, he could get you into the 20 fantasy point range. I think with the Jaguars, with their improved, you look overall at Jacksonville's secondary and pass defense, you're like, they've given it the 9th most fantasy points. But the last couple of weeks have gotten better. So I don't think it will necessarily be the runaway where they'll have to hand it off a million times. So I'm going to say Jimmy G, and I'm going to be looking for him in that 19 to 21 fantasy point range.
Donovan, are you agreement? Is it Jimmy G over Carson Wentz just based on the matchups today?
I think so. Listen, Jimmy G might throw it 9 times, but one could be a slant to Deebo Samuel he takes house. Another could be a pop pass to Deebo Samuel that he takes house, or an inside screen to George Kittle, who looks like he's rounding back into form, that he takes house. So he's proven he doesn't need to throw it a lot to have some respectable fantasy days, or monster fantasy days like he did last week. And so it's Garappolo for me.
Okay, moving on to a receiver question here, and this is going to get a chuckle out of both of you. I already know it. Nick Ted is asking A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase non-PPR. How exactly is that even possible is, first of all, my question. But Andy, you going A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase, and what is an embarrassment of riches here in this question?
That's a nice draft.
Yeah.
Our viewer
well done.
Very nice
well
draft.
done.
Well done, sir. I want to see his running backs. So I bet you the running backs suffered from that. However, I'm going to say Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase, because the like we spoke with the other guys, with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, it's rare that all 3 guys have a chance to eat. And Jamar Chase has been overall, except for the Browns game, sensational this year. He's been a wrecking ball. And I think you just got to go with Jamar Chase based on the volume. Like A.J. Brown is the top target, but he could get double teamed a little bit. I think the safer play is Jamar Chase.
Yeah, just a lot of depth in that wide receiving core with the Bengals that we've talked about. The one thing I'll say about Jamar Chase, Donovan, I want to get your take on this question as well. The drops that were sort of plaguing him during the preseason and a little bit throughout his college career seem to be making a little bit of a comeback here. He's had a couple where he's been in the end zone and he's had some pretty significant drops. And he's still an amazing fantasy player, but it's just worth something keeping an eye on, because you never want to see your receiver dropping points like that in the end zone. Donovan, A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase?
Yeah, luckily you don't lose for points for drops.
You
for fumbles.
Just catch the ball, though.
Yeah, to me, it's still Chase. He's basically, you put him in your starting lineup, you can basically say, I'm going into the game with a touchdown receiving, today, because that's pretty much what he does every day. But quite frankly, Andy, you said you want to see his running backs. I want to see his receivers, because the right answer is both. You can't tell me that you have 2 to 3 better receivers than those 2. So the right answer is both. I don't know who else you're starting, but don't. Those guys should be both starting for you.
Yeah. Nick Ted, if you're still with us here, why don't you write in who the other receivers are on the team? Maybe just send your entire roster in so we can dissect it, because it's pretty impressive to have A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase as who you're deciding between starting. It's pretty ridiculous.
Both to Donovan's
play
point.
both.
Jeez.
Play both. Yeah, great point, Donovan. Okay, Crimson's asking, do Ernest Johnson or David Montgomery half PPR? With Nick Chubb back in the lineup, this one seems like a pretty easy question, because Ernest is going to be more in that Kareem Hunt type role, if that. I think so. Andy, are you going Ernest Johnson or David Montgomery today?
You always go with the lead back. You always go with the more opportunity. That's going to be David Montgomery. I still think Ernest Johnson has a place as a flex play for bye week coverage, but out of the 2, no doubt Montgomery.
Donovan, are you in agreement with David Montgomery over Ernest Johnson here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought experiment is David Montgomery or Nick Chubb, because I'm expecting the exact same type of production from Dearness as I would Nick Chubb. And so I would play Montgomery over Chubb, but for those who have Johnson, don't be afraid to play him, to Andy's point, just because Kareem Hunt is what I meant to say. Just because I think Johnson's going to give you production like Kareem Hunt would.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to play Johnson because Nick Chubb's back.
Yeah. The flex position there, to Andy's point, Kareem Hunt has been productive when he's been in that second Browns running back role. So to DJ's point, there is an avenue here where D'Ernest Johnson can have some success out of that Browns backfield. Andis says, hey guys, great show. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Andis. Standard League needs to start two: Dante Foreman, Mark Ingram, Jeff Wilson, or Michael Carter. I know which ones I'm eyeing, but I want to know if you guys feel the same way. Andy, Dante Foreman, Mark Ingram, Jeff Wilson, or Michael Carter? Who are you going with? Pick two.
Ingram and Wilson. I like Michael Carter in general. I don't want any part of Joe Flacco quarterback. I can't do it.
And it's strangely becoming more of a committee in the Jets backfield, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me considering what we've seen from Michael Carter. He seems like a pretty good NFL running back, but they're, for whatever reason, making it more into a committee. Just, I guess, Jets doing Jets things. Donovan, start two: Foreman, Ingram, Wilson, or Carter.
For me, it's Ingram and Foreman. I like Wilson Jr. as well. I'm never really confident in Kyle Shanahan and how he's going to deploy his backs.
The 49ers just like it's enough, Shanahan. Like just give the ball. If Jeff Wilson's the bell cow today, like I could see Trey Sermon coming out of absolute nowhere, getting 15 touches and 2 touchdowns. Like this is the type of thing that just drives fantasy managers insane.
200 for Sermon.
And Kyle Shanahan is culprit number one when it comes to just giving fantasy managers absolute headaches. Okay, moving on. Aaron, Kenny Golladay or Devontae Freeman? It's a PPR. Which is interesting. Kenny Golladay, the Giants receiving core actually starting to get pretty healthy. Kadarius Toney looks like he's going to play. Same with Darius Slayton. Golladay back in lineup. Ingram is going to play. And when it comes to the Ravens backfield, Lamar Jackson obviously not playing. Devontae Freeman, and they released Le'Veon Bell earlier in the week too. So Donovan, you going Golladay or Devontae Freeman? PPR here. Let's help Aaron out.
Going Golladay. Daniel Jones and that Giants offense have had success against the Buccaneers, even though it's a tough matchup. Remember, a year ago, they were up 14 at the half, looking like they were going to have an upset. So the Bucs, quite as kept, have been struggling, and the group who struggled the most has been their secondary. I think we're going to see a stacked box in the case of what the Ravens will be looking at offensively. Freeman hasn't shown much burst, and so I would go Golladay.
Yeah, Andy, it's just interesting when it comes to the Ravens running backs because you look at who they are. Like Devontae Freeman, like really, Devontae Freeman is the best option that you have as a running back for the Ravens. But here we are, and he deserves the touches because he's been better than most people thought he was going to be when the Ravens brought him in.
It's true. And they don't like Tyson Williams for some reason. They don't like him. Just like Kyle Shanahan doesn't like Trey Sermon. I don't know why. They don't like him. They like Devontae Freeman. Out of those choices, I would honestly, if from Giants receivers, I would prefer Kadarius Toney, who's back healthy, to Kenny Golladay. And the reason I say that is because they've played so infrequently with Daniel Jones. I'm not sure what to expect when it comes to ball distribution. I'm not sure. It could be Golladay. It could be Toney. It could be Slayton. Sterling Shepard is questionable to play. Evan Ingram's gotten a bunch more touches. So where am I looking at there? Golladay could very well do well. But I think in this case, with the backup quarterback, they're going to have to, like we said earlier, keep it simple. Latavius Murray coming back in certainly will take away some touches. But Freeman has looked to be the guy that has at least been able to produce to some capacity. And I think if you keep it simple for Baltimore, I would go with Freeman.
I want to get to a defense question here, actually. It was Mike who's asking if you could sneak a second question in. Of course you can, Mike. No worries there. Titans defense or Dolphins defense? Titans going up against the Texans. Dolphins going up against the Jets, Jets. So, Donovan, are you going Titans or Dolphins today?
Dolphins defense. They're coming off a week where they won fantasy owners the week. Listen, playing man as much as they do can hurt you, but when there's no man beaters, it can really help you. And so expect the sacks to pile up. You're going against a quarterback that's not mobile. I think the Dolphins defense will not only keep the score low, they might create some havoc with some turnovers to get you some high scores from a defense.
You're not a believer in Joe Flacco, eh? I guess he's not elite anymore
Not
in
anymore.
your eyes. Not elite. Okay,
Never
let's get
was.
to the rapid fire portion of the show here as we wind down to get closer to 1 o'clock, which is always fun. Kickoff coming. Okay, Glenn's asking Darrell Williams in a timeshare or Adrian Peterson in a timeshare, but a soft Houston matchup. Darrell Williams or Adrian Peterson. Clyde Edwards-Helaire back in the lineup today. Andy.
Boy, I'll say Adrian Peterson because of the matchup, but I don't love it.
Donovan, Darrell Williams or Adrian Peterson today?
I'll give you a qualifier. If it's a PPR league, Darrell Williams, because as much as CH is coming back, they've really used Williams in the screen game. And even they threw it deep to him. He made a "You Got Mossed" highlight reel.
He did, yeah,
last week. However, if it is a standard league, Peterson is going to get a decent amount of carries. He's going to get some goal line work. And so I would say Peterson in a standard scoring league.
Yeah, we haven't seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire do what Darrell Williams did last week, that's for sure. But it just seems like, Donovan, you made this point earlier, Andy Reid and the Chiefs want to make an effort to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire the football, even though it hasn't necessarily worked out in their favor as much as they would have liked so far early in his career. All right, Jason, Dalton Schultz or TJ Hawkinson, half PPR. Andy, Dalton Schultz or TJ Hawkinson?
TJ Hawkinson put up 0, and I have him on one of my fantasy teams. 0 catches on one target. 0. They're not throwing the football. Dan Campbell's going to run it, like I said, like it's 1950. The forward pass does not exist, nor should it, in this Lions offense. Dalton Schultz, I don't think Dalton Schultz is going to have a big day, but he's going to get you more than 0.
Yeah, it should help a bit that Amari Cooper's out of the lineup. Hopefully that spreads targets around a little bit more. Donovan, Dalton Schultz or TJ Hawkinson?
Dalton Schultz, explosive, game I'm expecting from both offenses in the Cowboys-Chiefs game. Take the over, as I did in our Pick'em article on Sportsnet.ca. But I think Schultz is a much safer play this week.
Caesar asking Cam Newton or Tua Tagovailoa today against the Jets. Donovan, when we start with you, Cam Newton or Tua, who could be a sneaky DFS pick too if you're deciding to play that, going up against the Jets.
I'm going to say Tua. I've liked Tua a lot since he's come back into the lineup, and so given the matchup, I think Tua makes a lot of sense.
Andy, Cam Newton or Tua?
Yeah, got to go Tua there. With Waddle and Gesicki as compliments, got to go Tua.
Yeah, Gesicki with a weird donut last week, which was just sort of out of nowhere because he was establishing himself as close to a top 7, maybe even top 5 tight end. And then he hits us with a goose egg. But it should be a nice bounce back spot for Gesicki today. A follow-up from Caesar, PPR League, Jeff Wilson or T. Higgins. We've addressed the 49ers backfield, how sketchy it can be at times, but Wilson expected to be the workhorse back today for the 49ers. So, Donovan, who are you going with there?
Still go T. Higgins, especially since it's PPR league. I think T. Higgins is going to have a big day. I think they're going to throw it early and often. So Higgins in the play.
Andy.
I'll say Jeff Wilson, provided Eli Mitchell's officially ruled out. If he
has been. Yeah, he has been.
Official?
Yeah, official.
Okay.
He's out.
Okay, I'm going Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson. That is important to note. Sort of breaking news. And James Robinson also active today against the 49ers. So that's good news for James Robinson owners. Okay, moving on with just a couple more. SP is asking, is Antonio Gibson worth playing this week? Alternatives are Darrell Williams, Zach Moss, or Latavius Murray. I mean, Gibson absolutely has been giving fantasy managers headaches all year long. Can't really stay healthy. He's lost a bit of his explosiveness. But is he better than the other options that SP has put forth? Andy?
Yes, I believe he is. Got back in the end zone last week. And while that shin I don't think is going to be 100% all year, I like him and his upside possibilities better than the others.
Deej.
I was getting ready to say no until you read the other options. And
yeah. I mean, Darrell Williams was good up until about 20 minutes ago when we got the official word that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was actually going to be back in the lineup. FYB is asking non-PPR, Robbie Anderson or Kadarius Toney, who's expected to play back in the Giants lineup. Andy.
Oh, boy. You could have stinkers from both guys.
Yeah.
You really could. You really could.
Yeah. Boomer bust,
Oh,
baby. Boomer bust.
you know what? I'll say Toney because they might have to throw the ball more against Kansas City. I'll say Kadir. And we've seen him really pop. Robbie Anderson, we
Right.
haven't seen him really go off yet.
Yes. Donovan, same question. Robbie Anderson or Kadarius Toney?
That's tough.
You can see the consternation
sure
on his
thing.
face. Yeah, but it's a great point by Andy. Like, Toney has popped. And despite the fact that the Giants' pass catchers are a little more loaded now with everybody getting healthy, aside from Sterling Shepard, we haven't seen that level of elite from Robbie Anderson in a long, long time.
Yeah, I'll say Toney.
Okay, good. Jaden, Battle of the Michaels. Michael Pittman or Michael Carter? I don't even think this is a question, Jaden. You got to go with Michael Pittman, even though you're going up against
What are we doing?
the Bills. You got to go Pittman. He's matchup proof at this point, is he not, guys? Like, nod your head in approval if he's matchup proof.
Jaden,
he's going to be lower, but still.
Yeah, he's lower today, but you still have to start him. Yeah,
Jaden, you've got 2, maybe 3 wide receiver spots. Grab Michael Pittman, slide him to the top one, put him there, and leave him there.
Lock him in. I'm in agreement. Even though the Bills are tough D, you still got to go with him. Trent says, "Hey guys, hey Trent. Still start Mark Andrews today, or is it a better idea to stream Dallas Goedert or Ty Conklin?" Which is a very interesting question now that we know that Lamar Jackson is going to be out of the lineup. Andy, Andrews, Goddard, or Conklin?
It is a very good question.
Yeah.
I like Goddard overall. I believe I'm not sure if he's 100% or not going in. Check on that. If he is, I'll lean Goddard. Conklin's a guy about 4 weeks ago I was touting to pick up. Guy's very consistent, finally found the end zone. He's someone who's going to get you about 10 fantasy points consistently. Where if you're looking for a streaming fill-in option, I think that's right in line with what you want. I'm going to say Conklin.
His internet has been so good this whole time. This whole show. His internet has been lights out. And now the lights look like they're out.
He said his internet only lasts right until noon, and then it's like
it just cuts off at 12:05.
He said Conklin.
He's gonna be so upset. He's gonna be so upset.
I cut the plug on his Wi-Fi because I disagree. I think it's Andrew. You're going to downgrade. I just didn't want him preaching that nonsense to everybody any longer.
I can't. I only have one question left, but I can't finish until he comes back. Colin, I got to keep it going until Andy comes back. So I'm going to ask one more question.
Well, you might have him back. Listen, while we wait for him, I know you're downgrading Andrews because there's no.
You're not a Tyler Huntley believer yet.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I think you upgrade Andrews because there's also no Marquise Brown. And so he becomes the number one option. So I think Andrews is exactly where, from a projection standpoint, he would be normally. And thus, I think he would normally be above those other guys. So I'm going with Andrews.
Yeah, I think so too. He's just such a big part of this Ravens offense. There he is.
I was making such a good point. And then I looked up and I was like frozen. You know what? My computer knows when it's overtime, boys. I go 1 hour, and then the computer's checking out.
It's my bad. It's my bad. We're supposed to be off the air by 12, but I had to keep it going because I want to get all the questions in. Do you want to finish making your point, or you feel like you've made it?
I'll say if stay away from Andrews. If Goddard is 100% healthy, go Goddard. Otherwise, Conklin.
I just said the exact opposite, so that's why.
Okay.
Last one. So that we can say we've answered 100% of the questions. Tegan's asking Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard, Jarvis Landry, Zach Moss, or Miles Sanders at flex. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out Landry and Moss at the moment. Are you cool with that? So Gallup, Pollard, or Sanders today. Andy, let's get your opinion before any interference.
100% Michael Gallup with Cooper out. I think Gallup, and the fact is he returned from the IR and had that game under his belt as well to shake off the rust. Gallup's the play.
Deej.
Michael Gallup is going to gallop into the end zone. Because,
nice.
What number two receivers have done all year is say, "Where's Daniel Sorensen?" Okay, we're going right at him. So
sad. Horrible year.
Yeah, horrible. It's time to retire. I'm looking forward to the CeeDee Lamb, Tyrann Mathieu matchups, which will be pretty one-sided or pretty balanced. Gallup versus Sorensen will not. So assuming Sorensen gets on the field, Gallup has a big day.
All right, that's it. That's all for us. Week 11, big news with Lamar Jackson. He's actually officially inactive now. So that is throwing a wrench in a lot of people's plans. You got to make those adjustments to your fantasy lineups here week 11. Boys, always a pleasure. Deej, I know we'll be seeing you starting tomorrow this week on Tim and Friends, so that'll be fun. If you guys are watching, you like the content here, come and join us. Andy's got a ton of content on sportsnet.ca too. So hit us up anytime on Twitter. If you still have more questions about fantasy today, we'll be happy to answer them. You have our handles right there on the screen, at Jesse Rubinoff, at Donovan Bennett, at Andy MC Mac 81. So that's it for us. Going to be a fun week, and Thanksgiving, and Andy's gone. So I don't even need to finish. Andy's gone. Going to be a fun week, and Thanksgiving next week, American Thanksgiving. So there's going to be games on Thursday too. So Deej, fun week. We'll see ya. And that's it for us. Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. Have fun watching the footy today. We'll see ya.